failure to continue working in some moderately bad weather make us an international laughingstock?
Are we an international laughingstock for what's gone on in the last few days? Nigel Farage.
Well, I think what's happened here is the government, the Mayor of London, and local authorities, in fact the entire political class, they all so firmly believe in the theories about global warming that they never thought it was going to snow ever again in this country. I have to say there's another very positive side to what happened this week. I'm sure everybody in this room remembers when they were kids the excitement of waking up to thick snow. And I must admit the look on my 8-year-old daughter's face on Monday morning when she saw the snow and then realised that her school, like thousands of others in the country, was closed, was a joy to behold. So that was the upside of it. The downside of it is, frankly, I think the fact that thousands of our schools closed is simply a nonsense. I can understand that in parts of Kent and Sussex the trains would have struggled because 10 inches of snow was a hell of a lot for them to put up with. But what was interesting is on the blogs today, one or two people have been saying that 18 years ago, the last time southern England had a very heavy snowfall, that in those days the councils had in place a system whereby in the autumn they would speak to local farmers, they would speak to local builders merchants and people who own JCBs, and they would put in place a network where as soon as there was heavy snow, these people would go out and would grip roads and clear drifts and all the rest of it. And that now, 18 years on, 18 more years of centralised government, where government wants to control everything from the centre, both at national and at local council level, that network no longer exists. So I think we were, given that the Met Office got it right, and that makes a nice change, doesn't it? But given the Met Office got it right, I thought, frankly, the way most of Britain didn't go to work on Monday and Tuesday was really pretty shambolic.
Jeff Hoon, you're responsible for transport. Did you make us an international laughingstock because nobody could get to work?
This much I agree with Nigel. We had the worst weather on Monday than we'd had in 18 years. Now, the straightforward issue is this. Do we put on one side enough snowplows, enough equipment, enough salt and grit to deal with something that happens every 18 years? Now, clearly we could. We could buy a snowplow, which incidentally costs £100,000. It costs £10,000 a year to maintain, and we would use it once every 18 years. One of the slight problems is that we wouldn't use it because after 10 years you have to replace it. So we've got to make a judgment about the kind of equipment, the kind of resources that you have to pay as taxpayers in order to deal with this once every 18-year event. And when we compare it to other countries, it's quite interesting to see the BBC the other day, the correspondent in Moscow. Now Moscow has that kind of weather every single year. So necessarily, they buy the snowplows. They have the equipment to deal with this problem every single year.
So what would the cost be to get it so that you didn't have the shambles we had this week? What would it be? You worked it out, obviously.
I haven't worked out the global figure.
You haven't worked out the figure.
I've given you
You're always saying this about we'd have to buy, bulldozers and snowplows, but we don't know how much it costs.
Well, each one costs £100,000.
So how many would you need?
Well, it depends how many roads you want to clear. We could clearly have enough snowplows, you can clear every road. But the issue is this. In those places where large numbers of people are affected every year by this kind of weather, what happens? People, for example, buy snow chains. I'd be interested to know how many people in the audience have snow chains for their cars. If you go to a cold part of northern
They will
Europe,
now. They relied on the transport department up till this week.
well, that would be a very sensible
big
thing.
market in snowplows, snow chains.
It would be a very sensible thing to do. And if you go to places in northern Europe, they will have snow chains.
So everybody else is to blame. It's not. There's no fault.
not.
No fault. What Nigel Farage says that you didn't spot it coming. In effect,
We did spot it coming. We've had people working round the clock, delivering salt, clearing roads up and down the country. And Nigel, I'm afraid, is wrong, because the responsibility for dealing with local roads is very much in the hands of local authorities.
Okay.
And we
I'll stop
have had people right across the country, every day this week, out clearing roads.
Right. Theresa May, do you think the government is to blame, or Jeff Hoon is to blame at all for any of this, or do you absolve him?
Well, I think that there is an issue about coordination and things like the amount of salt that is available. And Jeff's been on television today saying that the government is now trying to work with the local authorities to make sure that there is enough salt available to grip the roads if we get the bad weather, which is now predicted to come again. And my question is, why wasn't that happening earlier, actually, from the government's point of view?
It wasn't just today. We have been doing that all week. The Highway Agency has been distributing salt to local authorities.
Jeff, if you've been doing it all week and preparing and making sure there's enough salt available, why is it local authorities are now saying they're going to run out of salt and not be able to grip the roads properly?
The answer to that is that some local authorities have strategic supplies. Norfolk, for example, at the start of this had 25 days gritting. Other local authorities had not put aside that amount of salt. And that is why we've had to redistribute salt from those areas that have salt to those that have smaller supplies. That is a matter for local authorities. As far as the main roads are concerned, the Highway Agency has made sure that the motorways, the main roads, have remained open.
So and by your judgment, Norfolk has spent more money than it should have done on salt because it doesn't need all the salt it's got.
Well,
like it doesn't need bulldozers and it...
Well, the answer is that
Wasting money.
No, Norfolk has been prudent. They put aside
but
money
you haven't been
for
as
this
prudent.
purpose. Well, we have been prudent because my responsibility is to deal with the main roads and the motorways. They have remained open.
All right, the woman there in the second row, you.
People pay a lot of money to use things like trains. They rely on public transport. And when it came to Monday, the whole of London shut down. We are meant to be an international, cultured mega city, and yet we shut down for a few inches of snow. And people rely on that. You know, people who bought a weekly pass for trains, did you refund their money because they couldn't travel on Monday?
Apparently you can fill in a very long form, which will take you till Thursday to fill in, and then you may get it. William.
I mean, I'm sorry, I disagree with you actually, and I'm going to defend Jeff because I think that this has been so overinflated, this whole thing. I mean, my brother said something. He said, how wonderful that there's, we were down in Cornwall and we were snowed in, and he said, how wonderful that people can, unite over something other than fear in a time of, a global economy crisis. What happened? And so the schools shut the first day. I mean, we have snow every 18 years. It's not something that you can, we're not Russia. And then the schools shut on the Tuesday and everyone complained and the lady said that this is a bad example to our children. It shows that we'll give up at the slightest thing. I mean, if they'd opened the schools, people would have complained saying it was a health and safety thing, so you can't win. And this whole snow thing has really angered me. And my nephew could go out in the snow and he had a day off school and he had a day with his mum, and I thought it was fantastic. And I remember when we were snowed in, when we were kids, and we had a great time. And it makes me very sad. I think we've turned into a blameocracy, and we have to look for, it's snow. It's not something you can control. I think this is
Lie back and enjoy it.
I'm sad, but yes, I'm sad.
Okay.
But, I thought, grown men became like children, and I think that should be the way it should be. I don't know why we're talking about it.
We're paying for an army of people to sit at home